The F.E.A.R. A mid-2000s first-person shooter. A highly regarded first-person shooter. As to why, though, I can kind of see what they were going for. I can't tell you, though, the amount of times I've actually tried to find other PS3 versions. Rather, I find the third one in the series, which is spelled with a 3. F.E.A.R. F.E.A.R. A scary first-person shooter action-adventure game. It's a pretty standard mission-based game. As the levels escalate in difficulty, so do the array of weapons you wield and the enemies you face off against. There are some pretty interesting qualities about this game that I feel might have cemented a lot of features that we would see in future games. For example, the crouching or peeking in and out of corners, and different puzzles and horde-style missions, which altogether form a cohesive FPS skeleton that we would see for many years to come. The OST isn't anything special. The aesthetic is pretty much a series of office buildings. However, I will say this is one of the last few games to actually utilize a very dark template. I'm going to say this game came out around 2005, 2006, and which is when a lot of games started to transition to, well, frankly, blooming almost everything. While that's a larger discussion, all I will say is that when you bloom everything and you want to make something dark and atmospheric and ambience, there's only so much you can do because the bloom adds light to basically everything. So this is one of the games where the actual aesthetic of the darkness and of the tones of blood and whatnot, and the lighting is actually very, very nice. And that's something we would see actually for quite some time. Maybe Dead Space 3 or Resident Evil 2 Remake. We would get this type of darkness, this actual atmospheric darkness, which seemed to went away simply because of technical improvements rather than imperfections. So let's talk about some of the good things about F.E.A.R. The array of weapons you get in this game are a lot of fun. I would have to say, first of all, hands down, the shotgun in this game might be the absolute best shotgun I have ever used in a game, period. It is just too good. It is the sound of it, the sound of the shell casing hitting the ground is just the cherry on top of this beautiful piece. The way the dust particles blast around in the air when you blast a drywall or some piece of equipment, it really is a stunning and wonderful weapon. And it like of all the shotguns I've ever had, this is the most shotgun-esque shotgun I've ever used, and of course it's based off the Spaz 12. The main gameplay feature of F.E.A.R, which we have to just talk about right now, is slow-mo. You know, there's a lot of things that I think F.E.A.R kind of presented as templates for a lot of games to come after it, but the slow-mo option is something that I feel is unfortunately lacking. It was such a great feature, and I think a feature that a lot of people look at F.E.A.R and say, hey, that's what F.E.A.R is all about. It's about that slow-mo thing that is so much fun to use. I can't tell you how much fun it is to use and how useful it is without totally breaking the game, because you move in slow motion as well. It just lets you time your shots more accurately and lets you ascertain situations more accurately, which is perfect for an FPS. And I'm so sad to see that it's not carried forward in the genre. I honestly feel it's something that could benefit a lot of first-person shooters in some capacity. I'm thinking of Metal Gear Solid 3 Reflex Sight. It is kind of a broken mechanic and maybe a bit heavy-handed for people who like the hardcore experience, but I can't tell you how many times it saved me and how much more fulfilling the game was with it. Besides shotguns, pertains to submachine guns, assault rifles, a certain weapon called the penetrator rifle, and a very unique kind of sniper rifle, which is a particle beam, which immediately incinerates the flesh around the target, leaving behind a comfy Mr. Skeletal in its place, while bursting into a red spasm and cloud of blood. This game is fairly gory, but not so gory. It's always such a strange thing to ask how gory a game is when something like Gears of War is rated M, as well as Halo 3. There definitely is blood in this game, and I think it does suit the kind of atmosphere that they're going for, which is a very depressing or oppressive, dark, morose military shooter. This game also has a certain theme which at this time I would call the Resident Evil 4 effect. While it is fun to be put in a survival horror scenario, what it inevitably leads to, or the natural evolution of that idea, is being able to blast the heck out of something once it's scared you. And I think F.E.A.R is pretty much the culmination of that mentality. F.E.A.R also, of course, has a bit of sci-fi aesthetic to it, with different types of grenade launchers, plasma rifles, and futuristic machine guns. The story itself is something I honestly can't really remember or even care to remember. It essentially was a rudimentary, some person or little girl was locked inside an asylum for an untold amount of time, and now her demonic spirit has been haunting this US military complex, which has somehow, of course, harnessed said paranormal activity to use it as a weapon against other enemy nations. Of course, the hubris of technology and mankind goes wrong, as it always does, and now this essence, if you will, has gone rogue and out of control, and they must call in the First Encounter Assault Recon Group, aka F.E.A.R, is sent in to neutralize said target. The game's antagonist is some kind of terrorist, I recall, along with a little girl from the Ring movie, pretty much taken directly out of it, who appears and spooks you and pretty much has a bunch of scripted jump scare events. You make your way fighting occasional demons, to soldiers, to mechs, to more powerful demon armor resistant soldiers, while uncovering the conspiracy to dehumanize and weaponize soldiers with the power of extra paranormal energies. F.E.A.R, I would say, isn't an exactly amazing or outstanding game, but it is heavily enjoyable, and I did have fun playing it. And as a dark-toned shooter, I think delivered exactly what it was going for. There are some interesting character tropes that do certainly present themselves that I can definitely see presented in other games such as Dead Space, and actually a very welcome comic relief character who appears several times throughout the campaign. And again, just to reiterate, the slow motion feature in this game just feels so good. I could spend all day shooting and breaking glass and then jumping and then kicking enemies in the face. The nice little touch about the slow motion is also that it actually slows down the dialogue in-game as well. It's a very fun tool, and so incredibly simple, I can't imagine why other games haven't utilized it. But yeah, there's not much else to say about it. It's a pretty interesting game for how it's laid the groundwork for a bunch of other games in its genre, and it still holds up to today. So if you see it for cheap, I definitely check it out. Until next time, guys. Ooh.